Real estate. It's a great way to build wealth, especially if you've got the time horizon for that. And that's what we used to do. But today I want to talk about just kind of a small little house. A house in my own hometown of Lockport, New York. It was 471 Hawley Street, Lockport, New York. Look it up. You can Zillow it. We bought this house in 2015, and this is awesome. We bought it for $21,992. Yes, you could buy houses back then for that, but the house needed a ton of work. So we renovated the house, but let me tell you how I bought it. I bought the house and I went to the bank, the traditional bank. Now, at that time, I borrowed money. I was at the early stage of the infinite banking concepts and me being my own banker at that time. I was paying off debt. But I borrowed from a bank, and I borrowed $40,000 from that bank. And we made monthly payments on that for some time. But see, I didn't make the payments. My tenant, who first moved into the property, paid $1,000 a month. And he paid that, so that paid the mortgage. Now, some things changed. That was 2015. In 2023, I made a decision to take the money from my policies. My policies, like this one, you can see this is a loan statement. I took the money from the policy and I paid off their bank. But at that time, I owed their bank $34,505.23. So I paid that bank off, but I still made the same monthly payment that I paid to their bank. I paid it back to my bank, my policy, where I took the loan to pay them off. I made the same payment, and I did that every month. But again, who was actually making the payment? Well, I guess I was, but the tenant was paying me $1,000. And that went on for quite some time. Now, I made the decision because the tenant moved out, left the house in shambles. We re-renovated it, didn't cost much, and we remarketed the house. Because if you look at this Zillow, look at what the price value of this house did. It went up a lot, just like most people's real estate did. So in 2025, as a matter of fact, December of 2025, we made a decision to sell the house, and we did. We sold it for $132,000. Our net after closing costs and all that good stuff, realtor commissions, was $119,421. Now, the only thing I'm not showing you here is I showed you what we bought it for. I showed you what the renovations were. They were like 30, it was like 21,000, and we put up to the 40,000 in for renovations. That's when we initially bought it. We renovated it again to get it sold. But no matter what, when you think of the renovations, 20, 30,000, it's a small house. We made a lot of money. The critical thing I want to explain here is what I did here. When I paid this off, and let's just use this, $34,505, okay? $34,505. That was the balance that was owed to the bank, was owed on the mortgage. So we'll just call that the mortgage. Most people, when they look at this, that's a liability. Well, I wanted to take it from a liability and turn it into an asset. I wanted this loan to be an asset on my books, not a liability. So again, here's how I did it. I had a policy. I was my own banker. I had been capitalizing that policy, and it was this New York Life policy. Not to call names out, but that's where I initially started my policy, so that's where it came from. I took a loan from my policy for $34,505. Let me see, I might even have the loan interest rate. It was like 4%. We'll just call it, and this is back a while ago, so it was right around the 4% range, okay? So in order to take a loan for $34,505, I would need to have more than $34,000. So let's just pretend, because I don't know what the number was, that I had $40,000 in cash value. And I don't know, New York Life, their dividend crediting rate back then was probably around 5.8%. But I could borrow at 4%. I'm earning a dividend crediting rate of 5.8 gross, and I could borrow at 4. So I took the $34,505, deposited it into my segregated bank account, and then I wrote a check to pay off their bank for $34,505. I then structured a note and a mortgage. Yes, we did a mortgage because we wanted to protect the asset. So we did a note and a mortgage for exactly the same amount that the bank was charging. So whatever the payment was to the bank, I can't remember what it was, but let's just say it was $485 a month, okay? We'll just pretend. Remember, this house is being rented for $1,000 a month. It was always rented for $1,000. I should have raised his rent, I didn't. But $485 was going to their bank, which means I wasn't making a huge profit. Because after you got taxes, you got water, you got maintenance, I wasn't making a lot on this property when I had their bank lending on the mortgage. But when I paid their bank off with my bank, let's talk about what was happening. First off, my policy that I took the loan from was very mature. It was over 10 years old. So I indeed definitely was making a nice spread on that money. Now, the spread is how a bank makes money. A bank will allow you to deposit money at some interest rate, call it 2%, and then they will lend that money back out at a rate like 7%, making the difference between the 2 and the 7 or whatever the interest rate is they charged on that loan. An asset. The loan to the bank is an asset. Therefore, the loan from my bank is an asset. But before, like I said, this loan, when the mortgage was at their bank, it was a liability. But now that I paid it off, this note and mortgage is an asset. An asset. I took the same monthly payment that I used to pay their bank. I ran it into this bank account. And then I paid it back up through recycle. We call this recycle and recapture. Sorry about my handwriting. I'm trying to kind of just do this while talking. I recycled and recaptured $485 a month. The same dollar amount I used to give away to their bank, but now I was paying it back to my private banking system, which is this policy. I kept $485. So I made money on the spread. What I was earning on the policy, and the longer you have the policy, the more mature it is, which is just time, the more your spread grows. So 5.8 minus 4. Let's just use that as the example. That would have been my spread. So I'm making that because when I took the money from the policy, I didn't use my money. I used the insurance company's money. They lent me money from their general account. They used my 40 grand as collateral. Hence I said you need to have more than what you're borrowing so that they can use it as collateral. That's how it works. So I made money there. But how much interest was their bank charging me? Well, that's a good question. They were charging 5.75%. So I paid myself back the same payment I used to pay their bank, dollar for dollar, which was a 5.75% interest rate on that mortgage, which means I was paying way more than that with the amortization schedule, but let's just keep this simple. So now 5.75 is being recaptured. Every month that I put that $485 a month payment back into my policy as a loan repayment, I had $485 to use. Also, my spread went up every single time because let's just keep here. Let me do another one. 34,505. Let me just kind of show you this. 34,505. But every month I'm making a payment of $485 back to my policy, which means because I'm the bank and I'm in control, that $485 goes into my account and I can use it the next day. But let's just do some quick math. I want you to see this. So $485 a month times 12 is $5,820 a year, okay? So now, every year, I am decreasing, these are my payments, okay? I am decreasing the principal balance, the loan, from the insurance company. I'm repaying that by $5,820. So $5,820 minus $34,505. We're just gonna do this a few times, okay? $28,685. I'm keeping this simple. Now, let's just say the insurance company was charging me, what was the rate that I used? 4%. And today, just in full transparency, the interest rate on the loans from the policies is more than 4%. But back then, when I did this, it was 4%. So let's just use 4%, and then we'll also do 5%. The math won't change. So let me show you this. 34,505 times 0.04. That would mean that the insurance company would charge me $1,380 and change, and that would be all interest. I lose that money. And at 5%, let's just do that again, 34,505 times 0.05, it would have been, we'll just put that over here, 1725, 5% interest. But every month, I made those payments back to my policy, those loan recapture recycles, which means after 1 year, so 1 year in, I repaid $5,820. Now, when you make a loan repayment back to your policy, It all goes to principal. They charge you interest one time per year. That is critical. So I'm not losing interest every month. All of my money, all of this $485 is going to reduce the principal. So now let's do the math. Same thing. Remember before I was giving $1,380 away, and every month this would have decreased, but I'm just keeping it simple. $28,685 times 0.04. Now I'm paying $1,147.40 in interest, which is significantly less than the $1,380. So we divide that into the amount that I originally borrowed to try to figure it out. Now I'm not giving the insurance company 4%, that's 3.325%. Okay, and the same thing would happen over here at the 5%. We'll do the same thing, 28,685 times 0.05. So that would be 1434 divided into 34,505. That would be 4.1. So what I'm trying to say is, because we're paying the principal down, we're paying the balance that we borrowed from the insurance company down, we are increasing our spread, because the one certain is if my insurance policy was paying me, what did I say to you guys? I said the insurance, and I'm just making numbers up, 5.8% dividend crediting rate. If they're still paying that on all of my cash flow, that means my cash value is growing. My cash value is going up year over year over year. And I just want to show you something, and I know this might be a bit blurry, but this will be a good reference point. I'm just randomly just going to grab one of my policy illustrations. What I'm trying to show you is, even if I had loans out on all of this money, which I did, because in this case I took the money from the policy to pay off their mortgage, I was still earning interest. I just want you to read this line. During the past year, your base plan guaranteed cash value increase was $6,642. And right here, just keep reading, your policy grew, or your cash value grew from $47,006 to $53,648. In addition to that guaranteed cash value increase, which is the interest rate, I got a dividend. And that dividend was $1,940.63. So come over here and let's just look at the growth of this policy. That was the amount that it grew by. You add the dividend plus the guaranteed interest, $8,582.63, minus the premium that I put in, which is $570.21 times 12 months. So that's $6,466. My net gain, net of commissions, net of policy service fee, net of the cost for this death benefit, and this is an old one. If I divide my net growth into the amount of my premium, $6,466, I made 32.7% cash on cash on the money that I put in the policy this year. Now I just want to show you one thing. I just want to show you the difference of 1 year. Here's 1 year later, as you can see, 2025. Same math, okay? But now my growth was 6,888, okay? Right there. 6,888 guaranteed plus the dividend, which is more. That's 9,188 in growth of the policy, minus my premium. So that means I had a net gain of 2,345. Divided into the premium right here, that is a 34.2% cash on cash. So you can see what I'm trying to explain is your spread goes up every year because your policy is growing, whether or not the money's in there. But you're increasing that spread by paying the loan down. But by paying the loan down, you're increasing your net worth because you're increasing your cash value. Every dollar you are getting back, and every dollar that you get back is actually increasing year over year because you're buying the interest rate down, the APR down. Now, let's come back over here and just look at this thing again. This is one giant circle. I started my own banking system. I used the loan to pay off a loan that I had from another bank, a mortgage. I paid that off. I made the same payments that I used to give their bank back to my bank, keeping it all, which is what I just showed you. And in this whole thing, I made a spread, plus I made this interest. I made a spread, which goes up every year, plus I made the interest, which down here, the mortgage rate was 5.75%. I did all of this at the same time as I collected rent on the property. And I made a wee little profit on the rent because the rent more than covered it all. But you see, I'm making money twice. The real estate's making money. I'm actually making money 3 times. The real estate is making money, okay? Expenses minus my income, which is the rent, is profit. Okay, that's profit center number 1. Then I'm making money another time because now I'm paying myself back every month, the same amount I gave to their bank, and I'm keeping all the interest I used to give away. I'm keeping all that. That's profit center number 2. And profit center number 3 is the gains I'm getting on the cash value because of uninterrupted compounding interest. On one real estate deal, because I changed one thing and added one step, I am now making money 3 times instead of 1 time. Most real estate investors become wealthy making it once on the property. I made it 3 times. And then I told you I sold the property December of 2025. Look it up on Zillow. As a matter of fact, here it is. I'll show it to you right now. That's what I sold it for. And look at, that's what I paid for it. All right there on Zillow. My net was $119,421. How much was my profit on that? Let's see, we had that written down. Roughly $41,375.52. That was my profit. And that profit was net of me paying the loan back to my policy, which was my money, my private bank's money. So the reason I wanted to do this video is just to show you that using your own private banking system for your own real estate deals, becoming the bank, paying off their bank and becoming the bank puts you in a real power position to make money 3 times instead of 1 time. You may not make money 3 times, but isn't 2 better than 1? It is. And you know what else I did? One final thing in the closing. I took this profit, this money that I got, and I paid off another mortgage that another bank was making money on me. And now I make that same payment back to myself. You see, it just continues. That's why it's called infinite banking concepts, because it's infinite in what you can do. Folks, if you like what you just learned here, then I want you to check this video out right here. The Secrets of the Wealthy, which gives you the fundamental basics of what the infinite banking concept is and how you can be your own bank. Thanks, and we'll see you on the next one.